Hi, welcome to One on One, brought to you by the Prescott Media Center, Prescott's Community Access Channel. I'm Ken Bennett, former Secretary of State, City Councilman and businessman here in Prescott. We are interviewing the candidates for the Prescott City Council and mayoral election coming up in August. And right now we have with us Connie Cantelme, who's running for the Prescott City Council. Connie, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Prescott and some of your background.
Well, as I said, I was an Air Force brat. My father was 30 years in the Air Force, and after he retired, we retired here to Prescott back in the 70s. Back when the population was about 4,800, by the way.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I promptly left, went back to Phoenix, went to school, had a family, started a company. Couldn't wait to come back and retire in Prescott, which I did about 13 years ago.
You know, a lot of people, when they're young, they can't wait to leave, and then within a few years, they can't wait to get back. And
that's exactly what happened.
Sounds like that was you, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you get back, and
I've been
brought
back,
a family back with you, or what?
Well, I've been back here about 13 and a half years. I moved right back down to Pleasant Street in downtown Prescott in the historic
on Pleasant
area.
Street? That's where my grandparents lived, was on Pleasant Street.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I restored 3 houses now on Pleasant Street.
All righty.
Yeah.
They were at 141 South Pleasant.
Well, I did 141 North Pleasant.
North Pleasant,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, 141 South. I did that one too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was my grandparents' home
very
for
cute
many
house.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lawyer from Phoenix owns that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty.
It's beautiful.
My grandparents go back to a time in the 20s or 30s. Their phone number in Prescott was 49.
Wow.
So that tells you how far back they were.
Yeah,
but,
it's great.
Okay, so you made your way back to Prescott, and
I did.
What have you been doing since then?
Well, I retired out of my large construction company. I own
Okay.
a construction company. I started back in the early 80s in Phoenix and ran that. It was a design build company, and I exclusively worked for attorneys and doctors.
Oh,
so I
okay.
managed millions of dollars and built big custom luxury homes all over, wherever they sent me.
Okay.
And I've done several projects up here. So when I came back 13 years ago, I did, as I was selling my company, I did go to Phoenix probably 3 days a week just to, as needed, put out fires.
Right.
But in the meantime, after kind of having little time, I decided to start buying up these beautiful bungalows, the ones that had been let go, and I started restoring them. So I'm on my 8th and 9th right now. I bought the former Church on the Street buildings,
All right.
and I've restored them. In fact, we're about 2 weeks from opening up a wedding chapel.
Well, I've been hearing that on the radio that that you did that. So your advertising's working.
Yeah.
Although I'm not aware of needing any weddings in the family right at the moment.
Never know though.
You never know. You never know. I've still got 2 unmarried children. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, tell me what made you run for council. Why are you offering yourself to run for city council at this time?
Well, as I said, when I came back to Prescott after having lived in downtown Prescott in the 80s, I lived in the Marks house actually at that time. And I would just remember every street was adorable, and every home had families and pride of ownership. And when I came back, I was a little just not sure what was going on. And having been involved in the restoration of many of the properties in the Encanto area while I was very involved down in the Phoenix area, I realized all of a sudden that I had 57 drug addicts living on my street.
Here in Prescott?
Here in Prescott.
Oh my goodness.
On Pleasant Street at one time. Not currently, but a few years ago. And so I just, as my time started to, become available, I started asking questions, and I realized that we had a proliferating drug addiction problem up here, and a lot of drug facilities. And so I got.
Which one was causing the other, or can you say?
Well, I have a theory.
Okay.
There's a lot of money to be made, and as it's coming to the forefront right now, even in the national news, a lot of the drug rehab facilities are not being successful at what they've promised to do, which is rehab the addict.
Right.
And in fact, as I went down to the legislature and represented the neighborhoods when Noel Campbell was getting his House Bill 2107 passed, I testified down there representing the neighborhoods of the historic area in particular here in downtown area, and I found out a lot of disturbing facts. And one of those facts that came out is that the bulk of the rehab facilities, not only here in Prescott, but in Phoenix and other places worldwide, can only attest to a 3 to 5% success rate. But in the meantime, we in Prescott were becoming proliferated with them. In fact, so much so that HUD came up here a few years ago and determined the same thing.
Okay.
And so it took about 2.5 years for Noel Campbell's House Bill 2107 to get through that would allow the city to draft an ordinance to kind of rein them in a little bit and make them a little bit more accountable, not only
Okay.
to the addict, which is primary, we want them to have good care, but also to advocate for the neighbors and the taxpayers in the downtown area. So the House bill passed, and then consequently the city drafted an ordinance which went into effect January 1. And what happened as far as the city knew a few years ago, we had 260 rehab homes that they knew about, and that was provable, and they had it on a list. We now, because I serve also on the ad hoc committee, the mayor's ad hoc committee for the sober living homes, we're down to somewhere around 60 to 64.
Okay,
So
wow. Quite a
yes,
reduction then.
lots. In fact, in November, right before the House bill and the ordinance went into effect, there were U-Hauls going up and down the streets here in the historic area. So, and again, we want the best care for the addict, but we
Right.
also need to be watching out for our neighborhood. And
Okay.
when you've got HUD coming in and agreeing that we had a concentration which had actually changed the fabric of the neighborhood, that went in. That was in consequence to what they were actually trying to do by putting the addicts into the neighborhoods,
Okay.
because all of a sudden the neighborhood had tipped from families into more addicts, and that was not productive for the addict.
Okay.
So I think now, because of the House bill and the ordinance, we're getting our neighborhoods back, and it's a lot of those homes have been on the market and they're sold to families now, and it's gone a long way to control that.
Okay.
It's also helped, I think, the facilities to kind of recheck what they've been doing,
All right.
look at it again, take another look at their model, which is called the Florida model, and hopefully they'll review that and try to be more successful.
Okay, good. So this was an issue that you have been working on.
Yes.
Was this the issue that kind of compelled you to run, or just the issue that kind of got you involved in the community in policy issues and things like that?
There were several issues. It just kind of layered on a little bit for me. The other thing that I thought was alarming, so I come from a large family, six kids, and of course we're not kids anymore, but
Right.
I have 4 brothers, and out of
Okay.
my 4 brothers, the 3 that remained in Prescott and raised their families, married here, had families, I've got 9 nieces and nephews. And much to our dismay, they've all left. They can't get good
Okay.
jobs. And
All right.
as a business person, I'm a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, I couldn't understand how that was happening. And so again, I started digging a little bit more. I've been very involved down there. And so Mayor Oberg was nice enough to ask me to become part of the Prescott Economic Advisory Committee.
Okay.
So once I was in the committee, many of my suspicions actually played out, and I
right.
realized that my hunches were correct. We've got there's several components to a successful city in my mind.
Okay.
And one of the components is, our youth and our millennials. And even though Prescott has been known, pretty much as a retirement community, I just don't think the retirement community can be as successful without the other pieces of the puzzle.
Right.
And so I would love to be able to see my own children and my grandchildren come here and get good jobs, and of course my nieces and nephews. So again, putting together the components, we've got these great colleges here. I think the number is something like 4,000 graduates come out of Embry-Riddle, Prescott College, Yavapai College, and probably CTEC is in there as well. And they leave. So we've got to figure out a way citywide to attract these millennials. There's studies out there that very clearly state what these millennials would like to have in our
Okay.
downtown area. They want to live, eat, and play and work in the same area. And I think we've got such a great opportunity right now to make some changes,
Okay.
take a fresh look at that avenue, that piece of the puzzle. I think we're doing great on the retirement area. We're not doing so good on the economic development.
So what are some of the ideas that you think you can help implement as a council person in that regard?
Well, one of the things as a businesswoman, again for 35 years, when I'm looking for a new area to expand my business into, I do research. And obviously with the internet nowadays, all of my research takes place on the internet. So as a smart business person, I'm doing the same thing that any other business company would do looking into a new venue for their company. So the first thing they're going to do, they're going to get on the internet and they're going to press in the internet, Prescott, Arizona. Well, unfortunately what comes up is rehab capital. We're number 3 for rehab.
In
And
Arizona or
no,
in-
worldwide.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we are
Okay.
getting big press nowadays, throughout the country. And it's not only us. I mean, I think Newport Beach is number 2, and I believe Florida, I don't think it's Naples, Florida, but a place in Florida is number 1. So we're quickly catching up. And so as a business person, I probably would have to, take a second look at why would I put my business in that environment when we're a community of a little over 40,000 people and we've got a proliferating, drug addiction problem up here. So even though we've done some great things to kind of get this under control for the city, we still I think we have to counteract that a little bit. So again, the different pieces of the puzzle. One of that is, trying to attract economic, business here.
Right.
We need to elevate the tax base. Unfortunately, the drug addicts, the recovering drug addicts, and the homeless people don't pay taxes. So we've got to, in order to do that, we've got to take care of the very thing that the people come here to see. 67% of our income in the city of Prescott comes from tourism.
Okay.
So my question has been, why are we allowing the very thing that they come to see, this beautiful, rich history that we have here, to dilapidate or at least look a little jagged around the edges?
Now you use the phrase elevate the tax base. What does that mean?
Well, for example, I restored several homes. One of the homes I restored, I bought from the drug industry, and at one time it had 15 drug addicts living in there. And I was able to buy that house because it had been, let go. I did put a lot of money, because in order to bring these houses up to code, you have to actually, restore them inside and out. So I put a lot of money in that house. I restored it. I put it back to its beautiful glory, and I sold it to a family that, made a lot of money. I mean, their income was $150,000. So we went from a home that was literally paying, the people inhabiting the home was paying, little or no taxes, to now a person who is contributing to our city. They're buying things, they're going to our restaurants, they're, purchasing cars, they're living here, they're keeping our streets up. So I think what's happening, and I've seen it happen, we've had so many people come in from, Ohio, Illinois, California, the people that I meet that want to live downtown. We just don't have enough product for them. So I think by providing that product, and now putting people in there that are paying a lot of taxes and contributing to our city, that is naturally going to elevate the tax base. And that's going to help on many levels.
Good. What other issues do you think are important? Your term that you seek as a council person is 4 years. How do you want Prescott to look or be different in 4 years because Connie was on the council?
Well, again, we have issues with water. We have, we're kind of landlocked. So I think I would like to see some of the infill areas done down here. I'd like to see some redevelopment down here. I'm not for, runaway growth by any means, but I am for managed growth, because they are going to come. We can't stop it. We've got to get on board and make sure that this is done properly. And I think it can be done properly so long as we, manage the growth. So I would like to be able to see the infill lots in the downtown area where by the way, there is no water issues. Start there, and that will naturally bleed out. We have, I know the school district is going through some changes right now. They've got 3 of their schools on the market. I think 1 is closed already and 2 are in the inspection period right now. So it's going to be interesting to see not only what they do with that money, but also what's going to go into those schools. So hopefully that's going to be something that's going to benefit the taxpayer. So, again, the economic growth, I would like to see that. I would also like to see the airport expanded. We need a runway, because that ties in, again, those pieces of the puzzle for economic growth, for our citizens. Business people need to get places. We need to ship product. But the other biggest thing just happened to us, and it was called the Goodwin Fire. And anybody that's opposing the runway needs to really take a very hard look at what just happened to us. So my son is a firefighter, and my son was up here fighting the Goodwin Fire. And on the line, I would get pictures nightly from him. Very terrible fire. He's been on so many fires over the last many years, and he said there was so much fuel on this one burning. They were praying for that slurry tanker to come, but we could not accommodate that tanker.
At our airport.
That's right. Our airport runway is not long enough to be able to accommodate that. So that tanker sat in Tucson when we could have really used that. So
what do we need to do to lengthen our runway and qualify for?
Well, I would like to see personally a public-private partnership in
Okay.
doing that. And I think in order to do that, we need the citizens and the taxpayers to get on board. So in order to do that, you know, this is obviously going to be a change for them, and it's change is always scary,
Right.
but we need to understand why we need to do that. So according to the national statistics, Prescott is number 9 on the list where a catastrophic fire event could happen here to us.
Okay.
We've got to be able to have what we need here to fight these fires
Right.
when they come. And again, 28,000 plus acres just burned. This should be a wake-up call. This is another reason we've got to take care of what we need to do. And of course, we need it for economic development as well.
Sure. Now, one of the other issues that's going to be on the ballot with you candidates is Prop 443.
Correct.
Any thoughts there? What do you,
Oh, I'm supporting 443.
Okay.
Yeah, for many reasons. We have to pay this debt down. If you are, the best analogy I've come up with is to explain to people, because it is such a complex issue, and this is something that we didn't cause it, the firemen and the police department did not cause this. This was legislated that every municipality has to keep this fund funded. And in order to do that, we are going to have to put that money in there. Now, when the fund lost the funding, or the fund became unfunded, was because of first the .com crash and then the real estate crash.
Okay.
So whatever they lost, we have been legislated to put that back. We have to make it whole, and so
Right.
we've got to do that. So the analogy is, to people that don't understand it, is think of if you have a 30-year mortgage as opposed to a 15-year mortgage, you can pay your debt down. It doesn't change the price of your home,
Right.
but by paying on it double payments, for example, you're going to pay it off because you're paying less interest.
Right.
So we need to do this with this 443. I don't see any logic in letting this 81 million grow. You know, they're saying
Right.
to 14.3 million in 2 years. We've got to get a handle on this now, and we need to do, as a city, whatever it takes to get this thing paid down and then move on. And so I am supporting this 443 for those
Okay.
reasons. But I also, again, I have a firefighter son who's in Tier 1, and this is a promise we made to these service.
And what entity does he work with, or where's he work out
He
of?
works in Phoenix
Okay.
Fire. He's at Daisy Mountain Fire Department.
Okay.
He works along the I-17 freeway.
All right.
So his job is mostly
But
accidents.
his crew was called up for
They
the
were.
Goodwin fire?
That's right.
Well,
yeah.
we thank you for your family's
Yeah.
service there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Hard-working kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and we're all, you know, to have this fire occur just 3 or 4 years after we lost the 19 in Yarnell.
yeah.
It was very poignant to see that plume of smoke that close to the town. And
Yeah.
we need to make sure that we have the capabilities to repel fire, because the wrong
Yeah.
fire in the wrong place with the wrong wind directions.
Oh, it would be
Prescott can really
devastating.
can
Yeah.
really be.
And there are studies that prove that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to
Now,
be careful.
what other issues do you want to try to address or improve as far as Prescott? What's the current council not doing that compelled you to say, I'd like to run?
Well, again, I think it's going back to our youth. We have Embry-Riddle here. I mean, you know, what an incredible university. We need to tap into that. I think we
Okay.
need to tap into that. Yavapai College, Prescott College. We've just got some brilliant minds. I visited Embry-Riddle a couple of times, and the caliber of, you know, I'm not going to call him kid, but student
Yeah.
there at the college is really amazing. I've heard through the grapevine that we are trying to attract maybe a cybersecurity center here, some tech
Okay.
items, which would be perfect for Prescott because they
Right.
don't take water.
Yeah.
These are, you know, smart people that are dialed into what's happening nationally. It would be such a good asset for Prescott to have these kids stay here. And a cybersecurity center or any kind of a tech center for Prescott would be a perfect melding of one of those pieces that we're missing.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you've mentioned water a couple times.
Yeah.
What ideas or what do you see as the challenges facing Prescott related to water, and what are some ideas on how we face those challenges?
Well, you know, that's cyclical. So let me just give you a quick example right now here down in Prescott. As a builder, and as I said, I have several properties down there. I have properties that were built back in the 1800s that for the first time in many years are requiring a sump pump. So currently, right now, our water table in the city is so high, I've had to add additional sump pumps. It's literally coming up through the concrete. I've been in several buildings downtown that have flooded out for the first time in 40 years. So this is a cyclical thing. If we had a storage area where we could, when we have this abundance of water, store that water for our eventual droughts,
Okay.
I think we need to really press that. I think we
All right.
need to find out, get this money, get these storage tanks taken care of so that we've got a reserve in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other issues that you think you might be addressing over the next 4 years if the voters vote you in?
Again, economic development. I would love to see our history preserved. I think that's another one. That's an issue I think that every single citizen here in Prescott could get behind.
And how would you, as a city council person, promote the maintenance and of our history and not letting that dry up and blow away?
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example. There's a Victorian home that a man came in. I haven't met him yet. I just briefly met him. It's on the corner of Marina and Willis, and that home, it was one of our painted ladies of a beautiful Victorian. He came in, he bought that place, he's been slowly beautifying it. I think the city needs to set up a reward system. I think that what he's done in contribution to this city, there will be unforeseen benefits to what he's done. I would like to see the city do that. Get a plaque. We need to honor him, make sure everybody understands the contribution that he made to the city. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but the Church on the Street buildings, there's another perfect example. That home that it was on the corner next to the church that I bought was built in 1883 by a man named E.C. Payne, a very famous Chicago businessman that came out here in 1881, bought those 3 lots for $150.
Really?
And the history is amazing there. I had a visit from some of his heirs that are still alive, the son that was born in that home.
All right.
And he absolutely cried when he saw that house was now being restored. And it's beautiful now.
Cried in a good way.
In a good way. Oh, he was so happy. Yeah, because that's their family. He brought his whole family in from all over the country when we completed it to do a walkthrough. And it was so fun to be there and listen to him reminisce about, the different parts of that house. But it's intact.
Yeah. Now, whether it's economic development or historical preservation, where do you kind of come down on the idea of incentives that the city should or should not provide? You mentioned maybe a reward for somebody who's done a good job in a historical preservation.
Well, in the Encanto area in Phoenix, back in the 80s, I was very involved in the restoration and the renovation of a lot of those streets in the Encanto area. And I have actually talked to the building department here about incentivizing infill lots, and that's what we did down there. So we went to builders we first settled on the builders that would be interested in doing that work. And then we incentivized them by giving them a break on their permit fees, and we set up a separate counter for them to expedite. Because here's what happens. When you have a historic home that was built in the 1800s, you can bet that there is not one thing in that home that's brought up to the building codes today. But you can also bet that there's not one builder out there that can afford to do it all at one time. So we made it the path to completion a little easier for them by having them file a plan that said, okay, I know you need to do the foundation now, that's $40,000, but you also need to bring the electric up to code. We're going to let you file a plan that in 2 years you make a promise you're going to have the money to do the electrical plan. And then that goes on and on. That goes into HVAC, it goes into plumbing, whatever. But we need to attack the important things first. And so I think the city would do well to
instead of making them do everything at once, which they might not be able to afford to do. Just do it in a planned, step-by-step basis.
Yeah, and then you're helping them out, you're incentivizing them, and again, the reward is wonderful for the area, for the tax base, for economics. It's just a win-win for everybody.
What about working with the other council persons? How have you done that in business, and how do you see maybe implementing the skills of working with the rest of the council to get things done? Because it's not just one vote. You got to get at least 4 out of the 7, and hopefully more than that. Yeah,
well, I have learned through working with my book of work, which were all attorneys, a lot of negotiating tactics. And one of them is, I'm very strong on this, is dealing with the facts. I'm a detail person, I'm a factual person, I research. So I think if I were to have an issue that maybe the bulk of the council didn't agree with me, I would go back and appeal with the facts. I do like to research things and come back and weigh it out, the pros and the cons. I've honestly never had a problem with that. Even if we can just agree to disagree and we move on, but I will always fight for my point because I'm fact-based.
Well, to close, what do you want to say to the voters of the city of Prescott as to why they should elect you to the Prescott City Council?
I hope you vote for me because I have a different vision for the city of Prescott. I, again, am trying to provide all parts of the puzzle to make this city viable for the future of our children and our future, by the way. The city is a wonderful city, and we have wonderful attributes that we just need to expound upon. I think that we've got probably a leg up over every other city because we have these great colleges. We have a great hometown, and the local people love it here, and they want to do everything they can to make it better. And I think if they, again, know the facts, and we can work towards that. So I'd like to map out a plan and just go about making
Good.
all those pieces of the puzzle whole.
Well, I appreciate you joining us here on
Yeah.
One to One. And thank you for your dedication to the community.
Thank you.
And the things that you've been doing on the business side. And good luck in attracting the voters' vote to put you on the council, because I sure enjoyed the 4 years I served on the city council.
I bet.
We appreciate the time that you spent with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. You too. Thanks.